The wall was 3 meters high, topped with decorative ironwork that would serve as handholds. Anna boosted Elena up first, her training overriding the burning in her muscles. "Climb," she ordered. "Don't look back." Elena scrambled up the wall with surprising agility, probably driven more by terror than skill. Anna followed, her hands finding holds by instinct more than sight. Behind them, footsteps pounded closer. They dropped over the other side, just as bullets began pinging off the ironwork above them. Anna grabbed Elena's hand again and pulled her into the dense vegetation that bordered the compound. They ran through darkness, guided only by Anna's memorized map of the extraction route. 200 meters, then 400. Anna's lungs burned and her legs screamed, but she didn't slow. Elena kept pace, her breathing ragged but determined. At 1 kilometer, they burst through a line of trees onto a dirt road where a nondescript black sedan waited with its engine running. Thomas Whitmore stood beside it, his face tight with concern that transformed to relief when he saw them. "Get in!" he commanded, already moving to open the rear door. They dove into the vehicle, and Thomas was behind the wheel and accelerating before Anna had even pulled the door fully closed. In the rearview mirror, she could see lights from the compound beginning to sweep the perimeter. "You're bleeding," Thomas said, glancing at Anna in the mirror. She looked down. There was blood on her sleeve, though she couldn't remember when she'd been injured. Adrenaline was still coursing through her system, making everything feel distant and surreal. "I'm fine," she managed. Elena was curled in the back seat, shaking with reaction now that the immediate danger had passed. Without thinking, Anna pulled the girl close, letting her sob against her shoulder. "You're safe now," Anna murmured in English. "I promise, you're safe." The debriefing took place in the embassy's secure room. Elena had been handed over to her father's legitimate security team, the ones who weren't compromised, and was being moved to a safe location while diplomatic arrangements were made for her eventual return to Moscow once her father's situation stabilized. Lady Catherine was there, her tablet ready with questions. Thomas stood by the window, his expression unreadable. "You could have been killed," he said finally, not looking at Anna. "Sokolov had a clear shot, but he missed," Anna replied simply. "Because you threw yourself into a gunfight to protect a stranger, a 15-year-old girl you'd seen exactly once before tonight." Thomas turned to face her, and Anna was surprised to see something that might have been awe in his expression. "That's not just loyalty to a mission or following orders. That's something else entirely." Lady Catherine typed rapidly. "That's what true loyalty looks like. Not blind obedience, not duty for duty's sake, but choosing to protect the vulnerable even when it costs you everything." Anna was quiet for a long moment. "I left the service because I thought I had to choose between being a spy and being human. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe the problem wasn't the work. It was forgetting why the work mattered." "Elena is alive because you remembered," Thomas said. "Because when it came down to it, you were loyal to something more important than self-preservation or operational security. You were loyal to basic human decency." He poured 3 glasses of whiskey. Yes, 3, because Lady Catherine held hers up with a triumphant smile and raised his in a toast. "To loyalty," Thomas said. "The real kind, the kind that actually matters." Anna raised her glass, feeling something shift inside her. Not a return to who she'd been, but a glimpse of who she might become. "To loyalty," she echoed. 3 weeks later, Anna submitted her resignation from her position as a housemaid at the British Embassy. Senora Costa accepted it with her usual brisk efficiency, never knowing that the quiet Brazilian woman who'd cleaned diplomatic quarters for 8 months had spent her last night of employment conducting an extraction operation that had saved a life. Anna had expected to feel relief. Instead, she felt restless. She was packing her small apartment when Thomas Whitmore appeared at her door, looking somehow less formal in civilian clothes, dark jeans and a sweater that made him seem more human than his usual diplomatic armor allowed. "Going somewhere?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Back to Recife," Anna said, continuing to fold clothes into her worn suitcase. "My mother needs help with her market stall. It's honest work, simple. Everything I wanted when I left the service." "Honest and simple," Thomas repeated, stepping into the apartment without invitation. "Is that really what you want? Or is it what you convinced yourself you deserved?" Anna's hands stilled on a folded shirt. "What are you doing here, Mr. Whitmore?" "Thomas," he corrected, "and I'm here to offer you a job. A real one this time. I told you. I'm done with that life. This isn't that life, Thomas said, settling into the rickety chair by her kitchen table, as if it were a throne. This is something different, something that might actually let you sleep at night. Despite herself, Anna was intrigued. She closed her suitcase and turned to face him fully. I'm listening. Lady Catherine has been working on a project for the past 2 years, Thomas began. A legitimate humanitarian organization that helps victims of human trafficking, political prisoners, people caught in situations where official channels either won't or can't intervene. It's entirely legal, entirely transparent, and entirely necessary. He pulled out a folder, always a folder with him, Anna thought with grim amusement, and placed it on the table between them. The organization is called Haven House. It operates across South America with quiet support from multiple governments who can't be seen officially condoning certain types of creative problem solving. We need people with your skill set, people who understand operations, but who also understand why the work matters. Anna stared at the folder, not touching it. You're asking me to keep doing what I just told you I couldn't do anymore. No, Thomas said firmly. I'm asking you to do what you did for Elena. Not because someone ordered you to, not because it served national interests, but because it was right, because someone needed help, and you had the skills to provide it. He leaned forward, his gray eyes intense. You told me you left the service because it was killing your humanity. This is a chance to use everything you learned without sacrificing it, to be loyal to something that actually deserves your loyalty. Anna picked up the folder, opening it slowly. Inside were case files, missing persons, victims of trafficking syndicates, political prisoners held in unofficial detention, each one a life that official channels had abandoned or deemed too complicated to save. How is this different from what I left? She asked quietly. Because you choose, Thomas said simply. Every case, every operation, every risk, you choose whether to take it on. No orders, no missions you didn't agree to. No superiors telling you the ends justify the means when you know they don't. Lady Catherine's voice came from Anna's laptop, which Thomas had apparently set up while she wasn't paying attention. The elderly woman appeared via video call, her tablet's text-to-speech function clear and firm. I built Haven House because I spent 40 years watching good people destroy themselves in service to abstract concepts of duty. I wanted to create something where people like you, people with conscience, with skills, with the courage to care, could use their abilities without losing their souls. Anna looked between Thomas and Lady Catherine's image on the screen. And if I say no? Then we wish you well in Recife, Thomas said, standing to leave. No pressure, no guilt. This only works if people choose it freely. He moved to the door, then paused. But Anna? That moment when you put yourself between Dimitri's gun and Elena? That wasn't training. That wasn't duty. That was who you are. And the world needs more people willing to make that choice. He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Anna sat alone in her half-packed apartment, staring at the Haven House folder. Inside were faces, people who needed help, people whom official systems had failed, people who would die or disappear if someone didn't choose to act. She thought about Elena's face when she'd realized rescue was real. She thought about the weight that had lifted from her chest when she'd finally used her skills for something that felt genuinely right. She thought about Thomas's words. Maybe the problem wasn't the work, it was forgetting why the work mattered. Anna pulled out her phone and sent a single message to the number Thomas had left. When do I start? 6 months later, Anna stood in Haven House's operations center, a discreet office in a São Paulo high-rise that looked like any other consulting firm. But behind the generic corporate facade was something extraordinary, a network of former intelligence operatives, humanitarian workers, legal experts, and support staff dedicated to helping those who'd fallen through the cracks of official protection. Thomas was briefing the team on a new case, a journalist being held in an unofficial detention facility in Venezuela, marked for disappearance because she'd reported on corruption too effectively. This is a voluntary assignment, Thomas said, his eyes scanning the room. High risk, minimal official support if things go wrong. Anyone who wants out, no judgment. No one moved. Anna caught Thomas's eye and saw the faint smile there. This was what loyalty looked like when it was freely given, when people chose to risk themselves for something that mattered. After the briefing, Lady Catherine approached Anna with her tablet. The elderly woman had become much more than a strategic coordinator. She'd become a mentor, someone who understood the weight of service and the cost of maintaining your humanity in difficult work. You've completed 17 successful operations in 6 months. Lady Catherine's text-to-speech read. That's remarkable, but I want to check in. Are you sleeping? Really sleeping? Anna considered the question honestly. Better than I have in years. The work is still hard. Sometimes it still haunts me, but I know why I'm doing it. That makes all the difference. Lady Catherine smiled and typed again. That's the difference between duty and loyalty. Duty is what you owe. Loyalty is what you choose. You're finally loyal to the right things. That evening, Anna met Thomas on the rooftop terrace of the office building. He'd brought wine. Good wine. Not the diplomatic reception kind, but something meant to be enjoyed rather than endured. Elena sent another message, Thomas said, pouring 2 glasses. She's back in Moscow, enrolled in university, studying international human rights law. She says she wants to help people the way someone once helped her. Anna accepted the glass, feeling warmth that had nothing to do with the alcohol. Does she know it was me? She knows someone cared enough to risk everything. That's what matters. Thomas raised his glass. You taught an old spy something, Ana Ferreira. What's that? That loyalty isn't about never breaking. It's about what you choose to be loyal to after you do break. You broke, you walked away, and then you found your way back to a version of service that lets you keep your soul. That's rare. That's precious. Anna thought about the journey that had brought her here, from burnout and despair to this rooftop, this work, this strange found family of people who'd all chosen something better than blind obedience. You were right, she said quietly. That day you told me I didn't understand loyalty. I didn't. I thought it meant never leaving, never questioning, never choosing myself. But real loyalty means being true to what matters, even when it costs you everything. Especially when it costs you everything, Thomas agreed. They stood in comfortable silence, watching São Paulo's lights spread below them like a field of stars. Somewhere in that vast city, there were people who needed help, people whom official systems would fail, people who would disappear into darkness unless someone chose to act. And Ana Ferreira, former ABIN operative, former housemaid, current member of Haven House, had finally found what she'd been searching for since the day she walked away from her old life. Not a return to who she'd been, but something better, a chance to be who she was meant to be all along, someone whose loyalty was freely given, someone who chose to stand between guns and innocent people, someone who understood that true loyalty wasn't about obeying orders, it was about honoring the values that made you human in the first place. To loyalty, Anna said, raising her glass. To the real kind, Thomas echoed. They drank, and in that moment, Anna felt something she hadn't felt in years, peace. Not because the work was easy or the world was safe, but because she'd finally found a way to use her skills without losing herself. She'd found her way back to loyalty, the kind that actually mattered, and that, she realized, was worth every sacrifice she'd made to get here. Epilogue. 1 year later. The safe house in Buenos Aires was modest, a 2-bedroom apartment in a middle-class neighborhood where no one paid attention to quiet people coming and going. Perfect for Haven House operations. Anna was reviewing extraction plans when her encrypted phone buzzed. Thomas's message was characteristically brief. New case. Russian asset. Needs immediate extraction. Interested? Anna looked at the file he'd attached. A 19-year-old woman who'd witnessed something she shouldn't have, now being hunted by the same organization that had once held Elena. The kind of case where official channels would get tangled in red tape while the target disappeared. The kind of case where someone needed to choose loyalty over bureaucracy. Anna typed her response. Send coordinates. I'm in. Because that's what real loyalty looked like. Not duty for duty's sake. Not blind obedience to abstract concepts. But the choice to stand between danger and innocence, to use everything you'd learned in service of something that actually mattered, to honor your skills by deploying them for people who had no one else. She packed her go-bag with practiced efficiency, her hands steady, her mind clear. 3 years ago, she'd walked away from the service because she'd forgotten why the work mattered. Now she was walking toward something better, work that let her be both skilled and human, both professional and compassionate, both effective and ethical. She'd found her way back to loyalty, and she'd never been more certain she was exactly where she belonged. The end. Thank you for reading this story about finding your way back to what matters. If you enjoyed it, please share your thoughts. Stories like this remind us that true loyalty isn't about blind obedience. It's about staying true to the values that make us human, even when it costs us everything. Você não entende de lealdade, disse o espião veterano. Até ver o que a empregada fez para salvar estranho, the polished mahogany surfaces of the embassy's private residence gleamed under the afternoon sun, streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Ana Ferreira adjusted the collar of her gray uniform for the 4th time that hour, her fingers trembling slightly, not from the effort of cleaning priceless artifacts, but from the familiar weight of pretending she was nothing more than what she appeared to be. At 26, Ana had mastered the art of being invisible, moving through the diplomatic quarters like a shadow with a rehearsed smile. She'd been working at the British Embassy in São Paulo for 8 months now, grateful for a position that paid enough to cover her modest apartment rent and send money back to her mother in Recife. The work was simple: clean, dust, serve tea when requested, and most importantly, never ask questions. "Third-floor library needs attention," called Senora Costa, the head housekeeper, barely glancing up from her inspection clipboard. "And stay out of Ambassador's private study. Mr. Whitmore is conducting sensitive meetings today." Ana nodded, gathering her cleaning supplies. Thomas Whitmore. Even his name carried the weight of British aristocracy and decades of intelligence work. She'd been cleaning his spaces for months now, and he'd never once acknowledged her presence beyond a curt nod, as if she were simply another piece of embassy furniture that happened to move occasionally. The diplomatic residence hummed with the controlled energy of people who negotiated international treaties over afternoon tea and conducted espionage operations under the guise of cultural exchanges. Ana knew that world intimately, though no one here suspected it. It was the world she'd abandoned 3 years ago when she'd walked away from her own intelligence career, when the weight of secrets and lies had become too much to bear. "Excuse me." The voice was clipped, distinctly British, with the kind of authority that came from 30 years of commanding operations across 3 continents. Ana turned to find Thomas Whitmore standing in the doorway of his study, his steel-gray eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her stomach clench with old, familiar tension. He was tall, probably in his late 50s, with silver hair cropped military short and a posture that had never quite shed its army training. His suit was Savile Row, undoubtedly custom, worn with the ease of someone who'd been born into privilege and refined it through decades of service. The slight bulge under his left arm suggested he still carried, even here in his own residence. "Yes, sir?" Ana said softly, keeping her eyes appropriately lowered in the deferent manner expected of domestic staff. She tried to ignore how her pulse quickened, that old instinct warning her that this man was dangerous in ways most people would never recognize. He wasn't just a retired spy playing at diplomacy. He was still active, still sharp, still lethal, despite the distinguished gray at his temples. "Not for you." Thomas gestured toward the elderly woman sitting in the high-backed chair near his desk. "My mother-in-law, Lady Catherine. She's been trying to communicate with you." Anna's gaze shifted to the woman, and her heart lurched with recognition of a different kind. Lady Catherine was perhaps 75, with snow-white hair arranged in an elegant chignon and intelligent blue eyes that held the same sharpness as her son-in-law's, despite the wheelchair and the slight tremor in her hands that suggested Parkinson's disease. The older woman was making subtle gestures, her mouth moving carefully as she tried to form words that wouldn't quite come. A stroke, Ana realized. Recent, probably within the last year, leaving her with aphasia and limited mobility. Without thinking, Ana set down her cleaning supplies and moved closer to Lady Catherine. She pulled out her phone, opened a text-to-speech application, and held it toward the elderly woman with a gentle smile. "Please," Ana said softly in English, her accent carrying just enough of her northeastern Brazilian roots to mark her as foreign. "Take your time. The phone will read whatever you type." Lady Catherine's eyes widened with surprise, then gratitude. Her trembling fingers moved slowly across Anna's phone screen, pecking out letters with painstaking care. When she finished, the synthetic voice read, "You're very kind. Most people become impatient. I wanted to compliment the tea service. The Earl Grey was perfectly brewed. I'll make sure the kitchen staff knows," Ana replied, genuinely smiling for the first time all day. "Would you like me to bring you anything else? Perhaps some of those lemon biscuits you seemed to enjoy yesterday?" Lady Catherine's face transformed with delight. She typed again. "You noticed? You pay attention to an old woman?" "Everyone deserves to be seen," Anna said simply, the words escaping before she could consider their weight. Behind her, Anna was vaguely aware that Thomas Whitmore had gone absolutely still in that particular way trained operatives did when they'd just witnessed something unexpected. She could feel his eyes boring into her back, analyzing, calculating, reassessing everything he thought he knew about the quiet Brazilian maid who'd been cleaning his residence for months. "Where did you learn to do that?" Thomas's voice cut through the moment like a scalpel, sharp and precise. "The text-to-speech accommodation. Most people wouldn't think of it." Anna felt the familiar panic rising in her chest, that old reflex screaming at her to deflect, to minimize, to disappear back into her carefully constructed facade of simplicity. She'd been so careful for so long, and now one moment of genuine compassion had potentially exposed her. I volunteered at a rehabilitation center back home, sir," Anna replied, keeping her voice neutral, her posture submissive. "Nothing important. Just something I picked up." "Nothing important." Thomas stepped closer, his voice dropping to that tone intelligence officers used when they knew someone was lying and wanted them to know it. "You speak fluent English with minimal accent. You instinctively know how to accommodate someone with aphasia. And you remember specific details about my mother-in-law's preferences from a single previous encounter." The question hung in the air between them like an accusation wrapped in curiosity. Anna could feel Lady Catherine's concerned gaze shifting between them, sensing the sudden tension but unable to fully understand its source. "I should get back to work," Anna said quietly, reaching for her cleaning supplies. Her hands were shaking visibly now, and she cursed herself for the tell, for the physical betrayal of her training that any competent officer would immediately recognize. "Wait." Thomas caught her wrist, not roughly, but with enough firmness to stop her movement. The contact sent an unexpected jolt of awareness through her, and she saw something flicker in his expression that suggested he'd felt it too. That spark of recognition between two people who understood violence and control and the weight of secrets. "I apologize," he said, releasing her immediately but not stepping back. That was unnecessarily interrogative. "My mother-in-law appreciates your kindness more than you know. She's struggled since the stroke. Few people have the patience or consideration you just showed." Anna's first instinct was to flee, to put distance between herself and this man who saw too much. But something in Thomas's expression stopped her, a flicker of genuine vulnerability beneath all that controlled authority, a glimpse of the human beneath the legend. "Lady Catherine is remarkable," Anna said softly, meaning it. "Anyone who can't see that isn't paying attention." 3 days later, Anna found herself unable to stop thinking about the interaction. She'd expected to be called into Senora Costa's office and quietly let go, her cover blown by a moment of kindness. Instead, she'd found an envelope in her locker containing a generous bonus and a handwritten note on heavy cream stationery. "Thank you for your compassion. It's rarer than you might think. T.W." The Tuesday afternoon shift at the embassy was quieter than usual, most of the diplomatic staff attending some function at the governor's palace. Anna was polishing the silver in the formal dining room when she felt it, that unmistakable sensation of being watched, the prickle of awareness that ran down her spine like ice water. Thomas Whitmore stood in the doorway, no longer in his typical Savile Row armor, but dressed more casually in dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. His gray eyes tracked her movements with predatory precision. "Mr. Whitmore," Anna said, her heart hammering against her ribs despite her efforts to maintain composure. "I wasn't aware you were still in residence." "The staff schedule indicated—" "The schedule was wrong," Thomas interrupted, moving into the room with that economical grace of someone trained to move silently, to close distance before targets realized they'd been approached. "I wanted to speak with you privately, about your background." Anna's grip tightened on the silver candlestick she'd been polishing, her knuckles going white. "My background, sir? Don't." The single word carried enough command to make Anna freeze. "Don't insult my intelligence or yours by playing the simple housemaid. I've been in this business too long not to recognize another operative when I see one." The air between them crackled with sudden tension. Anna could feel her training warring with her instinct to run, to disappear, to abandon this carefully constructed life before it all came crashing down around her. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but even to her own ears, the words sounded hollow. Thomas moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and understated, woody with hints of leather. "Your file says you're from Recife, came to São Paulo 8 months ago seeking better opportunities. No previous employment history beyond agricultural work and domestic service." He paused, letting the silence stretch. Anna forced herself to meet his gaze, to not look away, to not give him any more tells than she already had. "The problem," Thomas continued, his voice softer now but no less intense, "is that your English is too good. Your accent places you in Rio, not Recife, despite what your documents claim. You move like someone with tactical training, economic, aware, always positioning yourself with sight lines to exits. And you handled Lady Catherine with the kind of professional expertise that comes from specialized training in accommodating disabilities, the kind intelligence services provide for officers who might need to extract compromised assets with various impairments." Anna felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. This was it, the moment she'd been dreading and half expecting for months, the moment her past caught up with her present. "You don't understand," she started. "You're right," Thomas interrupted. "I don't understand. That's why I'm asking instead of reporting you to whoever would be very interested to know that a former intelligence operative is working in a foreign embassy under a false identity." The threat was implicit but clear. Anna's mind raced through her options. Run. But where? Fight. But that would only confirm everything he suspected. Lie. But he'd already seen through every fabrication in her file. "I left the service 3 years ago," Anna said finally, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. "I was ABIN, Brazilian Intelligence Agency. I did 7 years, mostly in counterintelligence operations, and then I walked away because I couldn't be that person anymore." Thomas's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted almost imperceptibly. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. "You burned out," he said. Not a question, but a statement of fact. "I broke," Anna corrected, her voice harder than she'd intended. "There's a difference. I didn't just get tired, I shattered. So I disappeared, built a new identity, and tried to be someone normal. Someone who doesn't spend every conversation analyzing for deception, who doesn't see threats in every shadow, who doesn't carry the weight of every operation that went wrong." She was saying too much, revealing too much, but the words kept spilling out like blood from a wound she'd thought had scarred over. "So, yes, Mr. Whitmore, you're right. I'm not really just a maid, but I'm not a threat either. I'm just someone who wanted to stop being a spy and start being human again." The silence that followed felt endless. Thomas studied her with those calculating gray eyes, and Anna forced herself to stand still, to accept his scrutiny, to not flee like every instinct screamed at her to do. 7 years in ABN, Thomas said finally. "Counterintelligence. That would have put you in contact with foreign operations on Brazilian soil, including ours." Anna said nothing, but her silence was confirmation enough. "Did you recognize me when you started working here?" he asked. "Yes." "And you took the position anyway?" "I needed the work," Anna said simply. "And I thought if I kept my head down, did my job, stayed invisible, maybe the past would stay where I left it." Thomas nodded slowly, processing. "You're good at invisible. I never suspected until the incident with Lady Catherine. That kindness, that genuine human connection, that's what gave you away. Ironic, isn't it?" There was something almost sad in his tone, a recognition of a shared truth, that in their world, showing genuine humanity was more dangerous than any act of violence. "What happens now?" Anna asked, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. Thomas was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant as if weighing options, calculating consequences. When he finally spoke, his words surprised her. "Now? Now you continue doing your job. But we're going to have a conversation about loyalty, about what it means to walk away, and about whether the past ever really lets us go." That conversation came 3 evenings later, after the embassy had emptied and the diplomatic staff had departed for the night. Thomas had asked Anna to join him in his private study, not as an employer to employee, but as one former operative to another. The study was everything Anna would have expected. Dark wood paneling, shelves lined with leather-bound books in multiple languages, a massive desk that had probably witnessed countless classified discussions. Thomas poured 2 glasses of whiskey from a crystal decanter, offering one to Anna before settling into the leather chair across from her. "You don't understand loyalty," he said, without preamble, the statement hanging between them like a challenge. "That's what my colleagues would say if they knew about you. That you abandoned your service, your country, your oath. That you're a deserter who can't be trusted." Anna took a sip of the whiskey, expensive, smooth, probably older than she was, and met his gaze steadily. "And what do you say?" "I say loyalty is more complicated than most people want to admit," Thomas replied. "I've spent 30 years in the service. I've run operations across 4 continents. I've recruited assets, burned sources, made decisions that cost lives. And I've learned that the people who talk most about loyalty are usually the ones who understand it least." He paused, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "True loyalty isn't blind obedience. It's not about following orders without question or sacrificing everything for an abstract concept of duty. True loyalty is about honoring your commitments while maintaining your humanity. It's about knowing when to hold fast and when to let go. It's about understanding that sometimes the most loyal thing you can do is walk away before you become something unrecognizable." Anna felt something tighten in her chest, a recognition of words she'd needed to hear for 3 years, but had never expected to come from someone like Thomas Whitmore. "You think I was loyal by leaving?" she asked quietly. "I think you were loyal to yourself," Thomas said, "which is the hardest kind of loyalty to maintain in our world. We're taught from day one to suppress our own needs, our own moral qualms, our own humanity in service of the mission. And most of us do it so well that we forget we ever had a self to be loyal to." He leaned forward, his expression intense. "But here's what I've learned after 3 decades. The operatives who forget their humanity don't last. They burn bright and they burn out, or worse, they become monsters who commit atrocities in the name of national security. The ones who survive with their souls intact are the ones who remember they're human first and spies second." "So you're not going to report me?" Anna asked, hardly daring to hope. "Report you for what? Having a conscience? For choosing life over death by inches?" Thomas shook his head. "No, but I am going to make you an offer." Anna's old instincts flared to life, wariness flooding through her. "What kind of offer?" "The kind where you stop pretending to be just a maid and start using your skills for something that might actually let you sleep at night," Thomas said. "I have a situation, a problem that requires someone with your specific background and skill set, someone who's outside official channels, who has reason to want to do good without the baggage of institutional loyalty." "I'm retired," Anna said firmly. "I left that life for a reason. I know. And I'm not asking you to go back to it. I'm asking you to use what you learned to help someone who has no one else." Thomas pulled a file folder from his desk drawer and slid it across to her. "Her name is Elena Volkov. She's 15 years old, the daughter of a Russian oligarch who's currently being held against her will in a compound outside São Paulo, while her father negotiates terms with people who would very much like her to disappear permanently." Anna's hand hovered over the folder, not touching it, but not pulling away either. "Why not use official channels? Your embassy has connections." "Because official channels take time we don't have, and they come with complications that could get Elena killed," Thomas interrupted. "Her father is playing a dangerous game, dealing with people connected to organized crime and corruption that reaches into multiple governments, including mine. If I go through proper channels, Elena will be dead before the paperwork clears." "And you think I can help her? How exactly?" Anna asked, though her mind was already working through scenarios, calculating possibilities, falling back into old patterns of strategic thinking. "I think you can get close in ways an official operative can't," Thomas said. "The compound uses local contractors for domestic work. You've already proven you're exceptional at being underestimated. You go in as a maid, assess the situation, and we extract Elena before her 16th birthday next week, which is when her father's enemies have made very clear they intend to use her as leverage." Anna stared at the folder, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. This was everything she'd walked away from: the danger, the deception, the moral complexity of operations that existed in the gray spaces between right and wrong. "Why me?" she asked. "You must have assets, resources, people with current training." Because you understand something most operatives never learn, Thomas said, his voice gentle now. You understand that the mission isn't always more important than the person. You proved that with Lady Catherine. You saw someone vulnerable, someone most people ignored, and you chose compassion over convenience. That's the kind of loyalty Elena needs right now. Not loyalty to a flag or an agency, but loyalty to basic human decency. He paused, letting his words sink in. You left the service because it was killing your humanity. This is a chance to use everything you learned without sacrificing it. Anna opened the folder. Inside was a photograph of a young girl with dark hair and frightened eyes, along with details about her location, her captors, and the timeline. She looked at that scared face and saw herself at 15, before the recruitment, before the training, before she'd learned to bury her feelings under layers of tactical thinking. If I do this, Anna said slowly, it's not because I'm coming back. This is one time for this one girl, and then I'm done. Understood, Thomas agreed. And you don't get to use this as leverage to pull me into your world permanently. I help Elena, and then you leave me alone to live my quiet life. You have my word. Anna looked at him, weighing that promise. Thomas Whitmore was legendary in intelligence circles, known for both his ruthless efficiency and his unexpected moments of honor. If he gave his word, she believed he would keep it. How long do I have to decide? She asked. Elena's birthday is in 6 days. After that, she becomes expendable to her father's enemies. Thomas stood, moving to pour himself more whiskey. I need your answer by tomorrow morning. Anna gathered the folder, holding it against her chest like a shield. I'll let you know. As she moved toward the door, Thomas's voice stopped her. Anna, for what it's worth, I think you're wrong about loyalty. She turned back. How so? You think walking away made you disloyal. I think it made you the most loyal person I've met in years, loyal to your own moral compass, even when it cost you everything. He raised his glass in a small salute. That's rare in our world. Don't lose it. Ainana didn't sleep that night. She sat in her small apartment, the folder open on her kitchen table, staring at Elena's frightened eyes in the photograph. She thought about loyalty, about duty, about the 3 years she'd spent trying to convince herself that being normal was better than being useful. But the truth kept circling back. She'd left the service because she couldn't stand the weight of the people she'd failed to save. And now, sitting in front of her was one person she could save, if she was brave enough to step back into the world she'd abandoned. At 6 a.m., Anna sent a single text message to the number Thomas had given her. I'm in. Tell me the plan. The reply came within minutes. Meet me at the embassy. Come to the service entrance. We have work to do. The operation briefing took place in a secure room deep in the embassy basement, the kind of space that didn't officially exist on any floor plans. Thomas had assembled a small team, a communications specialist, a logistics coordinator, and to Anna's surprise, Lady Catherine, who sat in her wheelchair with a tablet in her hands and a sharp, focused look that suggested her mind was as formidable as ever despite her physical limitations. Lady Catherine? Anna couldn't hide her surprise. The elderly woman smiled and typed rapidly on her tablet. You didn't think I spent 40 years married to an MI6 officer without learning a few things, did you? I may not be able to speak, but I can coordinate and plan as well as I ever could. Thomas caught Anna's expression and smiled slightly. My mother-in-law isn't just any diplomatic wife. She was one of the finest strategic analysts British intelligence ever had. The stroke took her speech, but not her mind. Over the next 4 hours, they laid out the operation in meticulous detail. Anna would be inserted into the compound as a replacement for a domestic worker who'd recently quit, a position Lady Catherine had arranged through her extensive network of contacts in São Paulo's household services sector. Once inside, Anna would have 72 hours to locate Elena, assess security, and identify extraction opportunities. The compound has 12 security personnel rotating in 8-hour shifts, Thomas explained, pointing to surveillance photos. Most are former military, well-trained but not expecting internal threats. They're focused on keeping people out, not keeping a 15-year-old girl in. That's our advantage. What about her father? Anna asked. Where is Volkov in all this? In Moscow, negotiating. He thinks Elena is safe in protective custody. He doesn't know that his protection was compromised 3 weeks ago when one of the security team leads was bought by the Bratva. Thomas pulled up another photo, this time of a harsh-faced man in his 40s. Dmitry Sokolov. He's the real threat. Former FSB, now freelance muscle for whoever pays. He's under orders to eliminate Elena on her birthday to send a message to her father. Anna studied the photos, committing faces and layouts to memory. Extraction timeline? Day 3, during the evening shift change. Security is thinnest then, and we'll have a vehicle staged 2 kilometers away. Thomas met her eyes. But Anna, if anything goes wrong, if your cover is blown or if Elena is moved, you abort immediately. Her life isn't worth yours. You don't believe that, Anna said quietly. Thomas was silent for a moment. No, he admitted, but I needed to say it anyway. Anna entered the Volkov compound on a Wednesday morning, carrying a single small bag and wearing the plain uniform of domestic staff. The estate was expansive, a modernist mansion set behind high walls and electronic gates, surrounded by manicured gardens that probably cost more to maintain than Anna had earned in her entire intelligence career. The head of household, a stern woman named Irina, greeted her with barely concealed disdain. You're replacing Marcia. She left without notice, unreliable, like most of your generation. You'll clean the main house, 2nd floor east wing. You do not enter the west wing under any circumstances. You do not speak to the residents unless spoken to first. You do not ask questions. Understood? Yes, ma'am, Anna replied, keeping her voice meek, her posture submissive. The west wing. That's where Elena would be. Anna spent the first day mapping the compound through careful observation. She noted the security rotation patterns, the blind spots in camera coverage, the weak points in the perimeter fence. She cataloged which guards were alert and which were bored, who took their duties seriously, and who spent their shifts on their phones. And on the second day, while cleaning a bathroom in the east wing, she saw her. Elena Volkov stood at the end of the hallway, escorted by 2 guards. She was taller than her photo suggested, but her eyes held the same fear. She looked directly at Anna for just a moment, a fleeting glance that most people would have missed, but that Anna recognized immediately. A silent plea for help. Anna finished her cleaning and moved on, giving no sign that she'd seen anything unusual. But that night, lying in the small staff quarters in the compound's basement, she activated the encrypted phone Thomas had given her and sent a single message. Target located. West Wing, 2nd floor, room 207. 2 guards constant. Will attempt contact tomorrow. The reply came quickly. Negative on direct contact. Too risky. Extraction window is tomorrow night, 21 King. Can you create a distraction? Anna stared at the message, her mind already working through possibilities. A distraction large enough to draw security, but not so large it would lock down the compound entirely. Something that would give her 5 minutes. That's all she needed. She typed back, confirmed. We'll be ready. The next evening, Anna reported for her shift carrying a small bottle hidden in the pocket of her uniform. It was nothing sophisticated, just concentrated cleaning solution that, when mixed with bleach in the right proportions, would create enough smoke to trigger fire alarms without actually causing a fire. At 20:45, she entered the East Wing bathroom and prepared her mixture. At 20:55, she poured it into the sink drain and quickly left, moving toward the West Wing stairs as alarms began shrieking throughout the compound. Chaos erupted immediately. Security personnel rushed toward the alarm source. Irina shouted orders in Russian and Portuguese, and in that confusion, Anna slipped up the West Wing stairs, moving with the economical speed of someone who'd done this 100 times before. Room 207. 2 guards outside, both looking toward the commotion but not abandoning their posts. Anna approached them directly, breathing hard as if she'd been running. Irina needs everyone downstairs, she gasped in Portuguese. She's screaming about a chemical spill, says we might need to evacuate. The guards exchanged glances. One pulled out a radio to confirm, and in that moment of distraction, Anna moved. Her hand shot out, pressing the pressure point below the first guard's ear. He dropped without a sound. The second guard was turning, reaching for his weapon, but Anna was faster. She swept his legs, caught him as he fell, and applied a chokehold that rendered him unconscious in seconds. She had maybe 3 minutes before someone realized the guards weren't responding to radio calls. Anna pushed open the door to room 207. Elena sat on the bed, her eyes wide with fear that transformed to desperate hope when she saw Anna. Do you speak English? Anna asked quickly. Yes, Elena whispered. Good. I'm here to get you out. Your father sent help, but I need you to trust me and move fast. Can you do that? Elena nodded, already standing. Anna quickly stripped the jacket off the unconscious guard and handed it to Elena. Put this on. Pull the cap low. If anyone sees us, you're a guard escorting a cleaning woman. Move confident, move fast, don't look scared. They descended the stairs together, Anna maintaining a careful pace, fast enough to suggest urgency, but not so fast as to draw attention. The compound was still in controlled chaos, security split between investigating the alarm and maintaining perimeter security. They were 50 meters from the south wall, where Anna knew there was a blind spot in camera coverage when Dmitry Sokolov stepped out of the shadows. "Going somewhere?" he asked in accented Portuguese, his hand resting casually on the gun at his hip. Anna pushed Elena behind her, her body moving into a defensive stance before conscious thought kicked in. "There was a chemical spill. We were told to evacuate this section." "Interesting," Dmitry said, not believing her for a second. "Because I just spoke to Irina and she said the spill was contained 5 minutes ago. Which means you have no reason to be escorting our guest toward the perimeter." He pulled his gun in one smooth motion, aiming it directly at Anna's chest. "I don't know who you are or who sent you, but you've just made a very expensive mistake." Time seemed to slow. Anna could see Dmitry's finger beginning to squeeze the trigger, could see Elena frozen in terror behind her, could feel the weight of this choice, save herself and abandon Elena, or commit to this action knowing it might cost everything. She chose loyalty, not to a flag or an agency, but to basic human decency. Anna dove forward, inside Dmitry's shooting range, her hand striking his wrist and deflecting the gun upward as it fired. The shot went wild, shattering a window behind them. She followed through with an elbow to his solar plexus, and as he doubled over, she grabbed his head and brought her knee up to meet his face. Dmitry dropped, and Anna grabbed Elena's hand. "Run!" They sprinted toward the south wall. Behind them, alarms shrieked anew, and Anna could hear shouts as security personnel finally understood this wasn't a drill. The wall was 3 meters high, topped with decorative ironwork that would serve as handholds. Anna boosted